After those last two games that you saw there, today, Brendan Rodgers left Leicester sort of around lunchtime. It's just after lunchtime. And then earlier this evening, Graham Potter lost his job at Chelsea, which means, Alan, just as an overview, in the Premier League this season, there have been 13 managerial departures, which is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, well, football is crazy. It's more crazy now than it ever has been because of the demand for success, and clubs cannot afford to be in a relegation battle. And as soon as they are, they press the panic button. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But there's no surprise. I mean, when you go into that particular job nowadays, you know the laws that come with it or the rules that come with it. You either win or you're out of a job, unfortunately. There's no time.
It's been very inconsistent for Graham Potter at Chelsea. And in fact, his points per game in the Premier League is the worst of any Chelsea manager in the Premier League. But is it any surprise that it has been that patchy given the influx of players?
I think most people thought it would have been better than it's been, even with the influx of players, because the quality they have to choose from. You know, the problem he's had is making a lot of changes in terms of tactics and personnel. That hasn't helped him at all. Ultimately, I don't see where you can go. It's very difficult to come back from a stadium that's toxic and booing your team off at half-time and full-time. Al and I were talking about, do we remember a manager that's come back from that? And the Chelsea owners probably sat there and thought, you know what, let's do it now, because they've got no chance of finishing in the top four.
When... I mean, I just said that football's crazy. Who on earth goes to a football club and pays over £20 million for their services, him and his staff, puts them on a 5 or 6 year contract on £10 million a year, gives them all these ridiculous amounts of players with a stupid amount of money that's been spent, and 7 months later sack him? It could only happen in football.
Well, a new owner. That's
well, a billionaire owner.
That's who does that. I mean, look, we've got all the players that Chelsea have signed under their new regime. We can't fit them all on one page. I'm surprised we can fit them on 2 pages, to be honest with you. But bearing in mind, Graham Potter is known as a man, as a coach, right? As a coach,
yep.
And meticulous in his planning, and also very big on the emotional intelligence of players and getting to know his players. Now, you put that massive group of players, one, it's going to take time to get to know them all. 2, how do you plan training sessions when you've got 30, 40 players?
And 3, by the way, where's your centre forward? You're spending all that money and you need a centre forward. I mean...
Do you know what? I think some managers are better suited to managing top players and being on the front foot. And some managers are better suited to managing teams who are the underdogs and need to keep tweaking and changing and having little tactical plans to try and punch above their weight. And I think he might be more of one of those. I don't know, I mean, might be being harsh, but it feels that way. Some managers are just made for dealing with bigger players and bigger egos and having a very forward-thinking plan. I've not seen that with
You
Chelsea.
talk about bringing all your staff in and you talk about bringing recruitment guys in and all of that. And, I mean, you can't tell me the recruitment guys have looked at that and thought, yeah, this is the way we're going to go, this is how we're going to plan. I mean, anyone with a football brain will tell you that doing that and signing that amount of players is not going to work.
Graham Potter's going to get another opportunity. Don't get me wrong. Well, people value he's done brilliantly to get where he is. Just touching on Brendan Rodgers, I think as well, very different situation. I think when the dust settles with that one, Brendan's going to look back and be very proud at the job he's done at Leicester. And I also think Leicester supporters, although angry now and frustrated at where they're at, it's not all been Brendan's fault. Let's get that right. I think a lot of them will look back on his time as successful and a good period for Leicester.
They've been a mess, haven't they, this season at times? And their transfer dealings have probably not helped Brendan Rodgers. But they're with the players that have left.
Yeah. No, he's not been helped at all. I mean, I said it last evening, I didn't know, but I get the feeling by looking at the attitudes and you're looking at their performances, and you get a feeling that there's something not quite right in the dressing room. Now, I agree with Danny. When he looks back at the FA Cup and the league positions and what he's done, he definitely hasn't been helped. Of course, he has to take responsibility because that's what you have to do as the coach or the manager. But he certainly hasn't been helped, and there's no doubt about it. He'll be back in the game and he'll get a very good job soon.
Absolutely. Well, I think it was a bizarre one because they turned the corner. You know, I was at a couple of games earlier in the season. They were they were winning games again, looking more confident, like the Leicester of old. And then the World Cup came, and they were out of the relegation comfortably. And then they come back from the World Cup, and the wheels fell off again. It's a bizarre. Very rarely do you see that where a team bounces back and then drops back in. But you are right; he has had problems there in terms of finances.
And also the fine margins here. Look, we all know how many teams are fighting to stay in this division at the moment. The other thing here is, and the obvious question to ask is, if Jean-Philippe Mateta hadn't scored with virtually the last kick of the game, they'd have got a point there.
Yeah.
They might not be next to bottom this evening.
Correct.
They'll be out of if they had got a point, then yeah, they'd have been out of the bottom three. So I'm not so sure that it would have happened if they'd have got something from that game.
And now you look at who might be in the running to replace him. Earlier on today, Rafa Benitez was the favourite to take that job. I'm guessing in a firefighter's role. Since Graham Potter was sacked at Chelsea, he's now the favourite to replace Brendan Rodgers at Leicester. But are Leicester just somebody just to keep them up and then assess again in the summer?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's where I'd be looking, yeah. I think they've got enough quality and creativity to stay in the league. They've got good players in the squad, but they do need to stop conceding goals. That's their big problem. But yeah, stopgap is the way forward.
And Brendan Rodgers is actually on the list of possible managerial appointments for Chelsea, such is the way it goes.
Eddie Howe's favourite, isn't he?
He's
quite happy at a big club.
What do Chelsea need? If you take Danny's point about dealing with big-name players, is that what they need?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, at times I'm sure that some of the bigger name players would have looked at Graham Potter and looked at some of his changing around in formations and personnel in different positions, and I'm sure they'd have looked at him at times and thought, I'm not quite understanding what's going on here. And we said the same last night. It's not for the first time that I've looked at Chelsea. So, yeah, I agree with that, yeah.